Lieutenant Eli Grayson had never been good at introductions. He could talk his way through a burning ship, but one look at the alien woman standing before him, and his brain decided to evacuate early. Commander Tsari of the Kareth expedition was not what he'd expected. He'd read the reports, a proud, cold, logical race from the outer spirals of the Orion Arm. But the woman in front of him wasn't just intimidating, she was breathtaking. Her silver skin shimmered faintly under the docking bay lights, like moonlight trapped in motion. Her eyes were alive with color, violet and gold swirling together like galaxies in slow dance. Even her voice carried a strange rhythm, low and melodic, with a softness that didn't belong in a military meeting. "Human male," she said, her tone curious but firm. "You are smaller than I expected." Eli blinked. "Well, that's one way to start a friendship." "Yeah," he said, trying to smile through his nerves. "You should see me in a good mood." For a second there was silence. The Kareth officers behind her froze as if he'd insulted their queen. Eli felt the weight of the moment settle on him. Idiot. First contact and you're already a diplomatic disaster. But then something unexpected happened. Tsari tilted her head slightly, her gaze softening. The corners of her lips curved in a way that could have been a smile or maybe a warning. "I like that," she said simply. Eli wasn't sure what she meant. The words were slow, careful, almost experimental, like she was trying them out for the first time. But there was a warmth there, and he could feel his heart jump in his chest. "Oh, thanks," he managed. Her expression didn't change. "Your response is confused." "Welcome to being human," he said with a small laugh. "We're kind of famous for it." The translator orb floating beside her pulsed faintly, recording his tone. She seemed to listen not to the words but to the feeling behind them. "Famous for confusion," she repeated, as if testing the taste of it. "Curious." They were standing in Docking Bay 7, one of the human-Kareth joint research platforms orbiting the gas giant Hellion 3. It was supposed to be a formal meeting, two species, one mission, explore the nebula on the far side of the system. But the air between them felt anything but formal. Eli's uniform was wrinkled from the long flight, his dark hair refusing to stay down. He looked like a man who'd slept in his cockpit, which was mostly true. Tsari, on the other hand, was grace made flesh, tall, flawless, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't understand the concept of clumsiness. Still, for some reason, she didn't look down on him. She just looked at him, really looked, like he was a new kind of creature she couldn't quite categorize yet. "Commander Tsari," he said, standing a little straighter. "I'm Lieutenant Eli Grayson, pilot of the UES Pathfinder. I'm assigned as your human liaison for this mission." "Liaison," she echoed. "A bridge." He smiled. "Exactly. Let's hope I don't collapse under the weight." Her eyes flickered again. Was that amusement? "You are light. You will not collapse." That's good to know." He didn't realize until later that Kareth humor didn't work like human humor. They didn't laugh out loud. Their amusement showed in subtle glows under their skin, faint light pulses that shimmered like ripples in water. At that moment, Eli thought the silver along her collarbone looked a little brighter. Maybe, just maybe, he'd made her laugh. As they walked through the airlock together, the hum of the ship surrounded them. Tsari's people were strange about sound. They claimed to feel it in their bones. She tilted her head slightly, listening. "Your ship is alive," she said softly. Eli grinned. "Oh, that's just the engines complaining. She's old but loyal." "I like that," she said again. "You like engines. I like loyalty." Her voice dropped slightly on the word, and something in her tone made his chest tighten. He wasn't sure if she knew what effect she had on him, or if she did it on purpose. Inside the main corridor, the crew passed them by, stealing glances. Humans and Kareth weren't used to working side by side yet. The two species had signed peace only a few years ago after decades of cold mistrust. Everyone expected this joint mission to be tense. Eli, however, was already distracted by something far more dangerous than politics. The way Tisari's eyes softened when she listened, the tiny smile she tried to hide when she caught him watching. He was supposed to act professional. He was failing spectacularly. "So," he said finally, trying to break the silence, "do I call you commander or—" "Tisari is sufficient," she replied. "Your people use first names for comfort, yes." "Yeah, helps us feel less like robots." "Then you may call me Tisari, and I will call you Eli." He froze. No alien had ever said his name quite like that, soft, melodic, almost like music. "Deal," he said quietly. When they reached the observation deck, the stars stretched before them, endless and bright. Hellion 3 storms swirled far below, painting the glass with shifting ribbons of color. Tisari stood beside him, her reflection shimmering against the window. "Your people chase the stars," she said, "even when they burn you." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, we can't seem to help it." "Why?" she asked. Eli thought for a long moment. "Because we're always hopping, the next one will be worth it." She looked at him, her eyes shining with something unspoken. Then she nodded slowly. "That," she said in her calm, careful voice, "I understand." As they stood together under the glow of the nebula, Eli couldn't help but think. Maybe this mission wasn't about stars or maps or orders. Maybe it was about something else. Something that started with a mistake. A laugh. And a single line he probably shouldn't have said. But she liked it anyway. The mission was supposed to be easy. At least that's what the briefing had promised. All Eli Grayson had to do was assist the Kareth crew in mapping an uncharted nebula, a swirl of starlight and magnetic storms far beyond the edge of known space. But easy, he was learning, didn't exist in the Kareth dictionary. Their ship, the Kareth Vera, ran on something called thought synchronization. In simple human terms, it flew using collective telepathy. Every Kareth officer linked their minds to the ship's core, guiding it like a living being. Every Kareth officer. Eli wasn't one of them. The moment they jumped into hyperspace, he felt like he'd been shoved into the middle of a concert where everyone else knew the song, except him. The ship pulsed with energy, alive and aware, but it didn't seem to like his human brain one bit. Every few hours, a burst of psychic noise would hit him like a migraine made of lightning. "Lieutenant Grayson," came Commander Tisari's calm voice through the comms, "your mind is disrupting the harmony." He groaned, clutching his head. "Yeah, well, my mind's not exactly known for being in tune." "Perhaps you should rest," she said, though her tone carried something that sounded suspiciously like amusement. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, squinting at the faint shimmer of her projection beside him. "Rest? You try sleeping next to a psychic engine that hates your brain waves." Her eyes glowed faintly violet, the sign of restrained laughter among her people. "Our minds are connected through feeling. You emit too much." "Too much feeling?" he asked, smirking. "I'll take that as a compliment." She tilted her head. "It is a dangerous one." Later that day, he found her alone in the engine chamber. The walls hummed softly, alive with shifting colors that reflected her mood, blue for focus, gold for calm. She stood in the center, her silver hair catching the light, her hands moving over a translucent control panel that seemed to respond to her heartbeat. "Are you fixing something?" he asked. "Correcting a misalignment," she replied without looking up. "The neural currents fluctuate when humans are present." "Meaning me," he said. "Yes," she paused, then added, "but it is not entirely unpleasant." Eli smiled. "You know, for someone who speaks 6 languages, you make not unpleasant sound like a love poem." Her gaze flickered toward him. "You twist meanings with ease." "That's what humans do best. We mess things up, then make it sound romantic. Tisari looked back at her console, her lips curving ever so slightly. Your people are strange. Thanks, he said, stepping closer. We like to think that's our charm. Working together was an adventure on its own. He'd talk too much. She'd listen in quiet curiosity. She'd explain something scientific in perfect precision. He'd make a joke that made no sense to anyone but him. And somehow they met halfway. Once, while recalibrating the gravity stabilizers, Eli accidentally dropped a wrench that floated halfway up the chamber before spinning off into a ventilation shaft. He groaned, "Well, there goes my favorite wrench." Tisari turned her glowing eyes toward him. "You humans assign affection to tools." "Only the special ones," he said. "That wrench and I have been through a lot together." She blinked slowly. "Do you also mourn them when lost?" "Depends on the wrench," he said with a grin. "This one, I'll write it a song." Her soft laugh echoed through the chamber, like wind over glass. The sound made something inside his chest feel lighter than it should have. "You are illogical," she said. "Yep," he replied proudly. "And unpredictable, that's kind of our brand." She tilted her head again, considering him. "Unpredictable," she murmured. "I like that." He smiled. "You keep saying that." "Do I?" Her tone was curious, not defensive. "Yeah," he said. "You've said it 3 times now." Her eyes flickered like starlight. "Then it must be true." That night, if night even existed in deep space, Eli couldn't sleep. The hum of the ship vibrated through the metal walls, low and alive. He wandered to the observation deck and found Tisari there, standing before the window, her reflection surrounded by endless stars. "You don't sleep either, huh?" he asked quietly. "I am listening," she said without turning. "The nebula whispers." He joined her by the glass. "What's it saying?" "That we are small," she said softly. "That the light we chase is older than everything we know." He looked at her profile, at the calm beauty of her expression, and smiled faintly. "That's poetic." "It is truth," she said. He shrugged. "Sometimes truth and poetry are the same thing." She finally turned toward him. "You speak in riddles." "Yeah," he said, "but only the fun kind." For a moment neither spoke. Outside, the stars drifted past like glowing dust. He could see her eyes reflecting them, infinite and warm, and he wondered what she saw when she looked at him, this messy, noisy, too-human pilot who didn't belong in her world. "I don't understand you," she said finally. "That's okay," he said softly. "Half the time I don't understand me either." Her lips curved again. "Then we are both lost." "Yeah," he said, "but we're lost together." The next morning, an alarm shook the ship. A sudden burst of energy surged through the neural grid, sending shockwaves across the systems. "Tisari," Eli shouted, running to the command bridge. "What happened?" "The nebula," she said, her calm voice trembling slightly for the first time. "It is alive." He stared at the screen, where the swirling colors outside pulsed like a beating heart. "Alive," he repeated. "Responding," she corrected, "to you." "To me," he said incredulously. "What did I do?" "You felt too loudly," she said. "Your emotions, they echoed." Eli blinked. "You're telling me the nebula heard my feelings?" She looked at him with both awe and exasperation. "Yes, human, and now it is speaking back." He ran a hand through his hair, half laughing. "Great, I just emotionally woke up a space cloud." Her expression softened, that familiar faint glow returning beneath her skin. "Unpredictable," she whispered again. "I like that." Eli couldn't tell if this mission was going to kill him or change him forever. But as the colors of the living nebula wrapped their light around the ship, he knew one thing for certain. He'd never met anyone like Tisari. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to feel the same. The first thing Eli noticed when he woke up was that he wasn't on the floor anymore. The second thing he noticed was that nothing was on the floor anymore. Wrenches, data pads, ration packs, all floated lazily in midair, drifting like sleepy jellyfish in the dim blue light of the ship. And there, upside down and completely calm, floated Commander Tsari. "Oh, come on," Eli groaned, pushing himself off the wall. "Not again." The Kareth Vera's artificial gravity generator had failed, for the third time that week, which meant another day of bouncing off walls and pretending to be a professional astronaut instead of a clumsy tourist in zero-G. Tsari, on the other hand, seemed perfectly at home. She drifted through the air with slow, graceful movements, her long limbs cutting through the weightless space like she'd been born to it, which, technically, she had. "Human Eli," she said calmly, turning midair to face him, "you appear unbalanced." He flailed slightly, trying to catch a handhold. "Yeah, thanks for the observation, Commander. Real helpful." Her lips twitched. "Would you like assistance?" "I'd love it, if it didn't involve me spinning like laundry." She floated closer, moving with practiced ease. Eli tried to back away, but with no gravity, that only sent him spinning in a slow circle. When he came back around, she was right in front of him, close enough that he could see the faint glow beneath her skin, like a heartbeat made of starlight. "Stop moving," she said softly. "I'm not trying to move," he replied. "I'm just really bad at physics." With one hand, she reached out and caught the front of his jacket. Her touch was surprisingly gentle, grounding him. For a moment, they just floated there, two bodies suspended in nothingness, staring at each other in the quiet hum of the ship. Her gaze searched his face. "Your people fear weightlessness." "Not fear," he said. "Just we like our feet on the ground makes us feel real." "Interesting," she said, her fingers still resting against his chest. "My people feel real only when we are free from weight." He smiled faintly. "Guess that makes us opposites." "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps two halves of balance." The way she said it made his heart trip. He opened his mouth to reply, but at that exact moment, a floating toolbox drifted into the back of his head. "Ow!" Her eyes widened in alarm. "Are you damaged?" "Only my dignity," he muttered, rubbing the spot. She frowned slightly. "Your dignity is located on your head." He couldn't help it, he laughed, a full, genuine laugh that filled the air between them. "No, Commander, that's just a figure of speech." "I see," she said thoughtfully. "Then your speech has many figures." "Too many," he said, still smiling. "You'll get used to it." They spent the next hour trying to repair the gravity generator, which would have been easier if the tools didn't keep floating away like rebellious pets. Eli drifted upside down, trying to hold a spanner steady while Tsari worked on the open panel below. "So," he asked, "what's the Kareth word for this situation?" She didn't look up. "Chasar, it means grace in chaos." He grinned. "Well, I'm definitely the chaos part." Her voice softened. "And perhaps I am the grace." He looked at her then, silver hair floating around her face like strands of light, eyes focused and calm, and thought, "Yeah, that sounds about right." When they finally reactivated the system, the floor reappeared beneath them in an instant. Unfortunately, gravity came back before Eli had time to adjust. He dropped like a stone, landing flat on his back with a heavy thud. Tsari, perfectly balanced, landed beside him as if she'd simply stepped down from a dream. Eli groaned. "See, that's why humans need gravity." Tsari leaned over him, concern flickering across her face. "You are injured." "Only my pride," he said again. "Pretty sure that's a recurring injury." "Your pride," she repeated slowly. "Is it also located on your back?" He blinked up at her, then started laughing again. "You're teasing me." "I am adapting," she said, the corners of her mouth curving. "Yeah," he said softly, "you're getting good at it." She studied him for a long moment. "You make humor from pain." "It's kind of our survival instinct," he said, propping himself up on one elbow. "Laugh or cry, right?" Cry? She asked curiously. You know sadness, when you lose something, when you hurt. She was quiet for a moment, eyes distant. My kind do not cry, we store our sorrow in light. He frowned gently. Light. She touched her chest, where a faint glow pulsed beneath her skin. It remains here, always visible. We do not hide what we feel. That's beautiful, he said quietly. She looked at him, her expression unreadable and painful. Later, as they floated through the observation corridor again, the nebula spread before them, colors alive and dancing, a sea of light that felt almost alive. Tisari stood beside him. The nebula still stirs, she said. It listens. Eli smirked, still reacting to me. Perhaps, she said softly, you are loud, Eli Grayson. He laughed. Hey, we humans have big emotions, we're messy. I have noticed, she said, eyes gleaming with that soft violet shimmer again. It is not unpleasant. He smiled at her teasing tone. Careful, Commander, that's starting to sound like flirting. She blinked. Then I will call it what it is. Oh, he said, raising a brow, and what's that? Learning, she said, her voice quiet and certain. I am learning you. The words hit him harder than he expected. He swallowed, suddenly aware of how close she was. The hum of the ship faded. All he could hear was the soft rhythm of her breath. He smiled faintly. You're a dangerous student. And you, she said, looking at him with that calm, searching gaze, are a dangerous teacher. For a long moment, neither spoke. The nebula's light washed over them, painting them in colors not found on Earth or Kareth. It felt like the universe itself was watching, holding its breath. And then Tisari smiled, a real smile bright as the stars. I like that, she whispered. Eli's heart stumbled in his chest. He shouldn't have said it the first time. But now, he was starting to like it too. The first warning came as a flicker in the lights. The second was the sound, deep and low, like thunder rolling through the bones of the ship. Eli looked up from the console, frowning. That's not good. Tisari stood at the helm, eyes narrowed. The glow beneath her skin pulsed faster, Kareth instinct. The nebula's currents are shifting, she said. Something is waking. Before Eli could ask what, the ship lurched violently. The stars outside twisted into streaks of color, and alarms screamed through the corridors. He grabbed the edge of the control table as gravity flickered again. Report, he shouted. The energy fields are unstable, Tisari replied, her voice calm but her hands moving fast. We are being pulled into the ion storm. The holographic display bloomed before them, a swirl of color and chaos. The nebula wasn't just gas and light anymore. It was alive, raging, swirling like a storm made of lightning and will. Can't we steer out of it? Eli asked. The storm surrounds us, she said. No clear path. He met her gaze. Then we make one. Tisari looked at him as if she wasn't sure whether to admire or arrest him. That is not how the void works. Guess it's time it learned, he said with a grin. Strap in, Commander. The ship trembled as Eli took the manual controls. Kareth ships weren't designed for human hands. They were meant to respond to thought and emotion, not muscle and instinct. But instinct was all Eli had. The storm outside was breathtaking and terrifying, a whirl of blue fire and crimson clouds, lightning arcing between tendrils of glowing mist. It looked like the inside of a living star. The ship's hull crackled with static, and light filled the cockpit in blinding flashes. Human Eli, Tisari said, bracing herself against the console. This is madness. Welcome to humanity, he shot back. The ship pitched sharply as he banked into a spiral. The artificial gravity flickered again, throwing them both forward. She reached out and caught his arm just as he steadied the controls. Her hand lingered, warm and firm. You do not fear death, she said softly. He glanced at her, a half-smile on his lips. Oh, I do. I just hate letting it win. For a moment amid the chaos, Her expression changed, something between awe and disbelief. Then the storm hit full force. Waves of electromagnetic energy slammed against the shields, sending arcs of light across the bridge. The hull groaned, the engine screamed, and Eli's teeth rattled as he fought to keep them level. Sorry, I need power to the thrusters. Diverting now, she said, her voice tight, but the neural grid. Forget the grid, manual override. Her eyes widened. That will cut off the ship's mind. Then we'll fly on mine, he said, just trust me. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Kareth's ships were sacred. Their neural cores were bonded to the crew. To disconnect it was like blinding a living creature. But then she looked at him, this reckless, laughing human with fire in his eyes, and she made her choice. Do it, she said. The lights dimmed. The humming that filled the ship's walls went silent. For the first time, the Vera felt dead, but Eli gripped the controls and pulled them hard through the storm. Bolts of plasma lit up the view like fireworks. The ship spun, dipped, then surged forward through a crack in the chaos, a narrow tunnel of light. Alarms blared, sparks flew from the console, and still he pushed on. Tsari held onto the railing, shouting over the roar, "You cannot hold it. Watch me." For a terrifying moment, it seemed the nebula would swallow them whole. But then the turbulence broke, the noise faded, and they burst into open space. Silence. The view beyond was calm and black again, stars glittering like scattered diamonds. Behind them the storm raged, beautiful and deadly, but distant now. Eli exhaled shakily. Told you I could drive. Tsari stared at him, her violet eyes wide. You survived. He leaned back in his seat with a tired grin. Yeah, I get that a lot. For a long time neither spoke. The ship drifted in quiet recovery, lights dim, power rerouting slowly. Tsari approached him, her movements unsteady, not from fear, but from something deeper. You risked everything, she said softly, for control you could not predict. He looked up at her. You trusted me. I trusted something I do not understand. He stood, still breathing hard. Understanding's overrated. Sometimes you just feel it. She frowned slightly. Feel. He stepped closer, close enough that the faint shimmer of her skin brushed against his sleeve. Yeah, like knowing something's right even when it's crazy. She studied him with quiet wonder. You feel deeply, Eli Grayson. It burns within you. That's the human condition, he said softly. We burn. Sometimes we survive the fire. Her eyes softened, and sometimes you light others. The air between them seemed to hum again, not with the ship's energy, but their own. The light from the nebula shimmered across her silver skin, painting her in color. He couldn't look away. You scare me, she whispered. Good, he said gently, means you're alive. A soft tremor ran through the ship as the systems came back online. Lights flickered, and the hum of the engines returned. The crisis was over, but something else had begun. Tsari turned toward the window, her voice low. You humans, you fly into storms with no guarantee of return. He smiled faintly. That's the fun part. She looked back at him, and this time her voice trembled with something real. I do not understand you. You don't have to, he said. You just have to fly with me. She stepped closer, so close that the light from the nebula framed them both. Then softly, almost to herself, she said, I like that. Eli smiled, and for once didn't try to hide it. Outside, the nebula pulsed one last time, as if watching them go. Two travelers, one born of logic, the other of chaos, standing together in the quiet after the storm. And for the first time, Tsari realized something dangerous. She wanted to understand what it meant to feel. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind felt almost louder than the thunder. For 3 days, the Kareth Vera drifted through calm space, its systems slowly recovering, its crew exhausted but alive. Eli Grayson had never liked quiet. It gave him too much time to think. And right now, every time he closed his eyes, all he saw was the storm, the blinding light, the shaking metal, and Tisari's hand gripping his arm like it was the only real thing left in the universe. He sat in the observation deck, boots up on the railing, watching the stars roll by. The nebula shimmered faintly behind them, a storm in slumber. He sipped cold coffee from a tin mug and wondered, not for the first time, how something so terrifying could look so beautiful afterward. "Human Eli," came a voice behind him, soft and steady. He turned. Tisari stood in the doorway, silver light playing across her skin. She looked calm as ever, but her eyes gave her away. They were different now, warmer, softer, filled with something he couldn't name. "Hey," he said, smiling, "couldn't sleep either." She stepped closer, her movements as fluid as ever. "I do not require sleep, but I have been thinking." "That's dangerous," he teased lightly. "You might start understanding humans." Her lips curved faintly. "I doubt that is possible." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Try anyway." She sat, folding her long legs beneath her with quiet grace. For a moment they just looked at the stars together. The hum of the ship surrounded them, steady now, peaceful. The chaos felt like a distant dream. Finally she spoke. "During the storm I felt your mind." Eli blinked. "You what?" "Your emotions," she clarified. "They were loud, like a sun breaking apart." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, that sounds about right." "It frightened me," she admitted. Her voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than any shout. "It was wild, uncontrolled. You felt fear, but you did not stop. You felt pain, but you kept moving forward." "That's the only way we know how," he said gently. "Fear doesn't stop us. It tells us we're still alive." She turned her head slightly, studying him. "And hope." He smiled faintly. "That's what makes us keep trying." There was a long pause. The stars outside reflected in her eyes, and she said, almost to herself, "Your kind are impossible." "Thanks," he said. "We try." She looked back at him. "You misunderstand. I do not mean it as insult." "I know," he said softly. "That's why it means something." They sat together for a while, letting silence fill the space between their words. It wasn't awkward. It was warm. Then Tisari spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "When I was young," she said, "my teachers told us that emotion was weakness, that logic keeps us safe, that control gives us strength." "And now?" Eli asked. She hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the window. "Now I am uncertain." He leaned forward. "Uncertain's good, means you're asking questions." Her eyes met his again. "You live inside uncertainty. How do you bear it?" He smiled sadly. "We don't bear it, we just make it ours. We build stories, songs, bad jokes, anything to make the unknown a little less scary." "Bad jokes," she echoed. He chuckled. "You've heard a few." She tilted her head, curious. "Then tell me another." He grinned, thinking. "Okay, why did the alien refuse to eat the space burger?" "Why?" "Because it was past its orbit date." She stared at him for a long second, then miraculously laughed. Not a faint glow this time, but a real musical laugh that filled the room and made him forget the bruises, the fear, everything. "That was terrible," she said, still laughing softly. "Yeah," he said, "but it made you laugh." Her smile lingered. "I like that." He froze, heart skipping at those words again, the ones she'd said the first day they met. Somehow, they meant something more now, something that made his chest ache in a good way. Later, as they walked through the quiet corridors, Tisari slowed beside a wall panel flickering with static light. "The ship's neural link is still weak," she said. "It needs time to heal." "Just like us," he murmured. She looked at him curiously. "You believe we need healing?" He met her gaze. "We almost died out there. You saved me. I saved you. That kind of thing changes people." Her eyes softened. "Then perhaps I am changing." He smiled. That makes two of us. They reached the viewing bay again. Outside, the stars stretched forever, cold and bright and endless. Tisari stopped, looking out. My people avoid storms, she said. We call them the madness of the void. And yet you flew into one, he said. Yes, she said quietly, with you. He stepped closer, close enough to see the starlight on her skin. You regret it. No, her voice was steady, sure. I would do it again. He couldn't stop the smile that spread across his face. Careful, Commander, that almost sounds like affection. Her eyes flickered like starlight. Perhaps it is. He felt the air shift between them, gentle and alive. The hum of the ship, the whisper of space, all of it faded into the background as they stood side by side, two travelers who had somehow found each other in the middle of a universe too big to understand. Tisari reached out slowly and touched his hand, just lightly, almost curious. Her skin was cool and soft, faintly glowing where their fingers met. Eli, she said softly, you make me forget my training. He swallowed. Good, maybe it's time you learned something new. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Then teach me. They stayed like that, hand in hand, watching the stars drift past the window. No words, no need. The storm was gone, but something else had begun. Quieter, warmer, infinitely more dangerous. Eli didn't know where this mission would end, or what waited for them beyond the next system. But for now, in that fragile silence after the storm, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't alone. And somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of logic and light, Tisari knew it too. The stars felt different now. Brighter somehow. Or maybe it was just Eli. Days had passed since the storm, but the memory of it still lingered, her hand in his, the way her voice shook for the first time, the spark of life in her calm, silver eyes. The Kareth Vera had stabilized, and for once things were quiet, peaceful. Too peaceful. He found himself walking the corridors at night, restless. The hum of the ship had a rhythm he could almost hear in his heartbeat, and every time he passed a window, he half expected to see her standing there, tall, graceful, surrounded by starlight like she belonged to it. He told himself it was just curiosity, friendship. He was lying, of course. He found her in the observation deck, exactly as he'd imagined. Tisari stood by the window, hands clasped behind her back, her reflection framed by the glow of a distant planet. The light shimmered on her skin like 1,000 tiny stars. You know, Eli said gently, you spend more time staring at the universe than anyone I've met. She didn't turn right away. It stares back, she said softly. He chuckled, creepy thought. Now she looked at him, the faintest smile touching her lips. Your humor is strange. Yeah, he said, stepping closer. It's how we survive feelings we don't understand. She tilted her head slightly. And what feelings are those? Eli hesitated. Her eyes caught the light, and something about her expression, curious, unguarded, made his throat tighten. Complicated ones, he said quietly. The kind that make you do stupid things. Like fly into storms, she asked. He grinned, exactly. Her smile softened, but her voice was calm again. You are brave, Eli Grayson, reckless but brave. Coming from you, I'll take that as a compliment. It is, she said. Then, after a pause, I have received orders from the council. The words hit him harder than he expected. Orders. Yes, she said. Our mission is complete. The data is secure. The Vera will return to Kareth space. You will return to your fleet. He froze. The words sank in like cold water. So that's it, he said quietly. We just go back. She nodded once. It is what must be done. He tried to smile, but it came out wrong. Guess I knew it was coming. You sound disappointed. He shrugged. I just thought maybe the universe would give us a longer story. Silence settled between them again, the kind that wasn't peaceful this time. It hurt. Tisari looked at him for a long moment, her eyes soft, almost uncertain. "Eli," she said slowly, "you do not speak what you feel." He laughed lightly, trying to deflect. "If I did that, I'd never stop talking." "I would listen," she said simply. That stopped him cold. The way she said it, steady, honest, without hesitation, hit him harder than the storm ever had. He turned to face her fully. "You really would, wouldn't you?" "Yes." He looked at her, searching for the right words. None of them seemed big enough. "I wasn't supposed to care," he said finally. "You're you, alien commander, brilliant, you glow for crying out loud." Her lips curved faintly. "And you are loud, reckless, and stubborn." "See," he said with a soft laugh, "we don't even make sense together." "Perhaps that is why it works," she said. He blinked. "You think this, whatever this is, works?" Her gaze didn't waver. I do not want it to end." The words hung in the air, fragile and beautiful. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Eli took a slow step toward her. "Tisari," he said quietly, "I don't know what comes next. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, but I'm not good at pretending anymore." Her silver eyes met his. "Pretending what?" "That I don't feel something when I look at you." The light beneath her skin shimmered brighter like a pulse. "You are certain?" "No," he said honestly, "but it's real." She took a breath, a purely human gesture she must have learned from him, and whispered, "You make my thoughts unquiet." He smiled softly. "That's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "I do not understand what this is," she admitted. "Your people would call it love." "Maybe," he said, "or something close." She looked down, her expression almost shy. "It frightens me." "Good," he said gently. "Means you're human where it matters." A soft light flickered through the window as the ship began to turn, aligning its course for home. The moment was slipping away, but neither of them wanted to move. Tisari stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. "Eli," she said softly, "among my people, when one mind trusts another completely, we share our light." He blinked. "Share it how?" "Like this." She lifted her hand and placed it gently over his chest. A soft warmth spread through him, gentle, glowing. For a second he saw flashes not from his eyes but from hers. The nebula, the stars, the way she saw him, small, fragile, burning bright. It wasn't telepathy, it was something deeper, connection. When she drew her hand back, his heart was racing. "That," she said quietly, "is my confession." He stared at her, speechless. You can't drop something like that and expect me to act normal." "I do not wish you to be normal," she said with a tiny smile. "I like you strange." He laughed, the sound shaky but warm. "You really do like saying that, don't you?" "Yes," she said softly, "because it is true." A chime echoed through the room, the signal for final navigation alignment. The separation countdown had begun. They had minutes left. Eli looked at her, every word in his chest fighting to be spoken. "So, this is goodbye." "Perhaps for now," she said, "but not forever." He smiled faintly. "You sure about that?" "No," she said, "but I will find you." She leaned forward then slowly and pressed her forehead to his, warm, glowing, quiet. A Kareth sign of deep trust. It felt like a promise. As the stars shifted and the engines came alive, Eli whispered, barely above a breath, "I shouldn't have said it." Tisari's eyes met his. "Said what?" He smiled softly, "That I like you." Her voice was steady, certain, almost human now. "I like that." It had been 3 months since Eli Grayson watched the Kareth Vera disappear into the stars. 3 months since the last time he saw Commander Tisari, her silver skin glowing faintly against the glass, her voice steady but soft as she said, "Perhaps not forever." And yet, every night, he looked out at the same sky, hopping. The Pathfinder, his human ship, had returned to familiar space, busy ports, noisy engines, coffee that tasted like regret. He'd been debriefed, congratulated, scolded, and finally given leave. The mission was called a successful first cooperative venture. He called it something else, unforgettable. But without her, the stars didn't shine quite the same. He spent his days working on small repairs, pretending not to check the comms every hour. The silence was constant. Until one night it was. The alert tone was faint, almost lost in the hum of the ship. Eli froze mid-step, his coffee nearly spilling as he glanced at the console. An encrypted signal blinked across the screen. Origin unknown. Frequency non-human. Language Kareth. His heart started pounding. He opened the message. Human Eli, the voice said, clear and unmistakable, threaded with warmth that no translation software could fake. Sorry. He grinned before she'd even finished speaking. Well, I'll be damned. The message continued. The Kareth Council forbids unsanctioned communication, she said, her voice calm but carrying a hint of mischief. But I have learned that humans do not always obey. He laughed out loud. You learned that right. Good, her voice replied, because I am coming back. Eli froze, staring at the speaker. You're what? Static filled the channel for a moment, then her voice again, softer now. I have missed your noise, Eli Grayson. The silence has been heavy. He swallowed, leaning against the console. You know, you've got a real talent for saying things that make my heart forget its job. This is an emotional response, she asked. Yeah, he said with a grin, a big one. I like that. He closed his eyes and laughed. Of course you do. 2 weeks later, the stars trembled. A Kareth ship appeared on long-range sensors, small, sleek, and shining like a shard of moonlight. It wasn't the Vera, it was smaller, personal. When it docked with the Pathfinder, Eli was already waiting in the airlock, heart racing like a kid waiting for the first sunrise. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and there she was. Commander Sorry, though she wasn't wearing her commander's insignia anymore. Her uniform was simpler, her eyes brighter. The glow beneath her skin pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat that matched his own. Permission to come aboard, she asked. He smiled, stepping forward. Always. She tilted her head slightly. You look different. So do you, he said. You're smiling. I learned it from you. He chuckled. Guess I'm a good teacher. You are a terrible teacher, she said, dead serious. He blinked, then saw the faint shimmer of amusement in her eyes. You're joking. Yes, she said. Did I do it correctly? Perfectly. They walked together through the ship's quiet halls. Everything felt familiar again. The hum of the engines, the distant shimmer of starlight outside the window. Yet everything was new. I resigned my commission, she said suddenly. He stopped. You what? The council believes I have been influenced, she said, her tone even. He stared at her. Because of me. Because of humanity, she said. Because I felt things I was not supposed to feel. He didn't know what to say. Sorry. She turned to him, eyes steady. It is not a punishment, it is freedom. He smiled slowly. And you came all this way for what? For this, she said softly and stepped closer. The light from the stars framed her face, silver and gold, and before he could say anything else, she placed her hand over his heart again. The warmth returned, spreading through him like sunlight after winter. This, she whispered, is what I could not forget. They stood there quiet and still, the universe spinning outside, as if holding its breath. Finally, Eli spoke, his voice low. You know, you're probably the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. She smiled faintly, because I fly through storms. Because you made me fall for an alien. Her eyes shimmered. Then we are both in danger. He laughed softly, and then, before reason could catch up, he took her hand in his and leaned forward. Their foreheads met, her gesture her way, and the moment burned brighter than the stars. Time passed differently after that. They traveled together, not for orders, not for duty, but for the joy of it. He taught her how to make coffee. She hated it. She taught him how to listen to silence. He failed miserably. They explored forgotten moons, chased starlight through asteroid fields, and laughed more than either of them thought possible. Sometimes they'd argue. Humans and Kareth had different ideas about logic after all, but it always ended the same way, with her saying softly, "I like that," and him smiling like a fool. They didn't know what the future held. Maybe they'd never find a place where they truly belonged. Maybe they'd spend their lives running between two worlds that would never understand them. But it didn't matter, because when they looked at each other, they both saw the same truth, something worth flying through storms for. One night as they drifted near the edge of a new nebula, Tisari stood by the window again, her reflection framed in starlight. Eli joined her, setting 2 cups down, one real coffee, one the sweeter Kareth brew she preferred. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "what the stars think of us?" She glanced at him. "I think they envy us." He raised a brow. "Envy?" "Yes," she said softly, "because they shine forever but they never feel." He smiled. "You're starting to sound human." She looked at him with that familiar, calm warmth and said, "No, I am starting to sound alive." The ship drifted on, 2 souls against the endless dark, one born of stars, one born of earth, bound not by orders or duty but by choice. And somewhere beyond the nebula, the universe whispered its approval. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do in all the stars is love something you were never meant to understand.